This is a tutorial on the contingency removal form, CAR form CR. It is a short form and we will go through it quickly. I'll show you how you can fill it out. I should start by saying that contingencies don't automatically go away upon expiration of the contingency period. So in the purchase agreement, if you only have, let's say you have 17 days, that's the standard contingency period by default. If the buyer doesn't remove contingencies in writing, which requires the buyer to sign and deliver this to the listing agent, those contingencies continue on indefinitely. They never go away, and the buyer can back out based on that contingency. So, and I've had it in the past where a listing agent or a seller has called and said, hey, close of escrows tomorrow. By the way, the buyer never removed contingencies. Could they back out if they wanted to at the last minute? And I say, yes, they can, and they'll get their deposit back because the contingency never went away. It just continued on indefinitely. It was incumbent upon the listing agent to demand that the buyer remove those contingencies upon expiration of the period. So we'll jump right into it. Just keep that in mind that this form is used to remove those contingencies. All right, so we start at the top here, and by default, this is incorporated into the purchase agreement or relates to the purchase agreement. Unless you check this box, let's say that this is part of a negotiation for a request for repairs, you'll check this box. And then you'll put the date of the agreement that you're referencing up here. Not the date that you're filling this form out, the date of this form, top left corner of the purchase agreement or the request for repair. Property address, names of the parties. Section 1 gives a brief description. Section 2, this is where we're actually removing contingencies. Now, I like to look at contingencies in a group of three different ways. You have loan, appraisal, and investigations. Loan's pretty straightforward. Can you get the loan or not? Do you feel confident you can? You're removing the contingency when you think the buyer can get the loan. You check that box and you can send it off. For appraisal, pretty straightforward. Check this box and send it off. Investigation, if you're removing the entire investigation, you could just check this box and that removes the investigation. C1. But look at this whole mess of text. I think this overly complicates the investigation contingency, quite frankly. Now, I get the reasoning behind it, but it's still a mess. So rather than go through each of these lines, because these are all unique cases, most of the time these boxes are not checked. They're just there for unique cases, and you'll know when it's a unique case. Like this removes the preliminary title report, meaning, so in theory, you could get a copy of a preliminary title report, and the listing agent could say, I know that was a big concern. It was a concern for us. We'd feel better if you removed the contingency to get your hands on a prelim. You could do it here. But that's a very unique case. That may never happen in the course of someone's real estate career. So rather than me do a deep dive on each of these lines, just know that you have the reference of the paragraph of the RPA. Let me jump over to an RPA. You can just look at the paragraph number and see the corresponding number here. You'll know if this pertains to your situation. You'll be able to just look at, if you have some unique scenario and the listing agent's making a unique request, just find what fits and check the box. Aside from that, ignore all this. Just use A, B, and C1, or here's the most common. We're going to jump over to number 4 real quick. Buyer hereby removes any and all contingencies. This is the most common and typical way this form is used. A buyer's agent checks this box, has the buyer sign it when all these contingencies are being removed at once, and then they send it. That's it. Now we'll jump back to number 3. Here's the next most common scenario. All contingencies are being removed except one of these, and these are broken down into this. So this makes way more sense than this whole mess up here, because you're basically saying we're removing all contingencies except, and then you just indicate which one. Loan, that's a big one. Appraisal, that's a big one. And then condo and HOA. Why is this one written out? This is common because a lot of times it takes an HOA a long time to get the docs to the buyer, and the buyer needs those before they remove their inspection or investigation contingency. So this is used the second most commonly, but really between doing number 4 doing number 3, or 2A, B, and C1, that's all you need to use this form. Just see which one of those 3 measures relates to your scenario. That's it. Most of the time, buyers will just hold off and then just send a removal for everything. And if one thing is lagging, you can do this. We're removing everything except what? What's lagging? HOA docs? Okay, we're removing everything except HOA docs. Or the appraisal hasn't come back yet, remove everything but appraisal. So that's it. That's the easy way to do this form. Go number 4, go number 3, or go number 2A, B, C, and 1. And that's it. Buyer's going to sign, date, and deliver. Sometimes the seller signs this and sends it back. They don't need to. This is only if there's a seller contingency. And a seller contingency, they tell you right here, closing on replacement property. That's the most common seller contingency. Most of the time, this is not used. On most transactions, this does not need to be used. This form does not need to be fully executed by both parties. This is a unilateral form where the buyer signs and delivers, seller gets it and goes, okay, I have written documentation that the contingencies have been removed. And then they don't sign. They don't need to do anything. The seller would do the same thing. If the seller's removing their replacement property contingency, they would sign and send to the buyer, and the buyer goes, okay, I got it. Understood. You've given me notice. Thank you. But there's no signing and returning. This form does not need to be executed by the other party. That's it. That is how you do the contingency removal form. Thank you for watching.